Chapter 9, Agendas and Transitions. I'd like to talk about agendas and transitions together because I think they're closely connected. I'll explain in further detail below, but it's first helpful to keep in mind that your overall presentation is made up of several chapters that create a story, like a book, or an overall message that consists of parts. Agendas. It's important to provide an agenda of your presentation, and you generally have a lot of latitude in how you do it. It can either be explicit or implied, meaning it can be written on a slide or just spoken. I've never walked into a meeting in my corporate life or into a classroom in my teaching life without providing an agenda. It's important to make sure you tell the audience why they are there and what you'll be talking about. Don't assume they already know. Sure, they may have a general idea, but be specific. It can only help. An agenda will not only reinforce or clarify the quote what, but it will also provide the quote why. In other words, be concerned with what they'll get out of it. Don't confuse this with a presentation agenda that literally lists out the specific topics in a timetable format with hours, break times, lunch, etc. Those are perfectly fine, but they work better for an entire day of presentations. That's more of an itinerary. An agenda should be clear. The, quote, chapters of your presentation should be listed in the simplest terms possible. If you decide to make an agenda slide and your topic is, for example, on the benefits of dual sourcing, you're probably trying to convince your company to move forward with a plan, and your agenda may look something like this. Bullet point 1, state of the category. Bullet point 2, current challenges. Bullet point 3, alternatives and options. Bullet point 4, overcoming major concerns. Bullet point 5, benefits. Bullet point 6, takeaways/next steps. I would recommend always providing takeaways/next steps for business agendas. This is a better way of doing a conclusion since you're providing key action points by way of a summary. If you're presenting on something you've already placed into action and it's been successful, then you may want to conclude with calling it, quote, wins. Transitions. Transitions can be tricky for both practitioners and students. In all fairness, books often explain transitions in ways that don't always make much sense. I like to think of transitions as linkages, connectors, or bridges. In short, they are the, quote, setups. I'll explain. Transitions link one thought with the next. It's often been said, and perhaps proven psychologically, that audiences remember the beginnings and endings of a presentation. Also, psychologists generally believe we have an attention span of approximately 17 minutes for any given topic. So, transitions help open and close each topic you're presenting, and they give meaning to what you've just said and are about to say. Think of your overall presentation as a book. Books have chapters, and transitions are needed to connect each chapter. Or think of a movie. A movie is made up of scenes. The transitions between scenes can be overt or nuanced, but all good, professionally made movies have transitions that connect one scene to the next. You can also think of the parts, topics of your presentation as puzzle pieces. Think of when you did puzzles as a kid. You needed the puzzle pieces to fit together to recreate the image shown on the cover of the box. You couldn't just force them into place. There are many ways to do transitions. Some can be matter of fact, and some can be more nuanced. Here's an example of a very basic matter of fact style. Now that we've provided an overview of the 4 P's of marketing, let's discuss the importance of each of them. Granted, this is very simple, but technically this is an acceptable transition. Why? You're telling your audience what you're concluding and what you'll be doing next. Again, you're connecting the pieces to create an overall story. You wouldn't want to give an overview of the 4 P's and then immediately get into detail of the first P, which is often product. You never, quote, set it up for your audience. You owe it to them to do so. Now, let's get a bit more complex. Here's an example of a more nuanced transition, and I simply call this the historic future or backward style. The The growth of the consumer internet in the 1990s was revolutionary. It created not only so much innovation, but also new business platforms. But it's important to remember that while the internet was very exciting and created new value, in some cases it didn't. Technology just for the sake of technology isn't a guaranteed recipe for success. That will keep us grounded when we look at how to best manage opportunities with virtual reality and augmented reality. So, here I'm offering a bit of historical perspective to place these new opportunities into the appropriate context. And I'm also, quote, setting things up for my audience. The rhetorical question style. Let's say, as a sales director, you've given your sales team some information, facts on a new product. After you've given the information, you may ask something like, now, how are we going to get our customers to see the brilliance of this new product? Then you go into your suggestions for doing so. While there are many transition styles you can use, make sure that you're setting things up as necessary. Also, remember that transitions are not optional, they're necessary. Again, you can think of them in different ways, but remember that ultimately they are the quote connectors in your overall story. They are smooth runway that allow you to move from one thought to the next. Without them, you'll be riddled with potholes, speed bumps, and detours. Transitions with group presentations. Group presentations are common in both industry and academic settings, and they also need transitions. Those transitions are easy to identify since typically each individual is given a subtopic to present. Most of the time, people in group presentations will make a basic transition and say something like this. I'm now going to hand it off to Melissa. There's nothing wrong with this, although I will admit it's pretty basic and not very impactful. There are more sophisticated transitions. I'll share a few examples that are not only more sophisticated and impactful, but are dual purpose. You get two for the price of one. In other words, these examples also provide a nice summary, reinforcement conclusion of what the previous speaker just presented. Instead of simply providing the name of the next presenter, you can be more impactful by doing something like this. Now that we've shared why embracing social media like Instagram can really help improve your business, Melissa will walk you through how to execute some really exciting Instagram campaigns. This is much more impactful in my opinion. Also, this statement is versatile. In other words, it can be used by the outgoing presenter or the incoming presenter, which of course in that case you replace Melissa with I or we. You can also try something like this, which in this case would be mentioned by the incoming presenter. Wow, Mike just gave us 3 really compelling reasons why we need to increase security on our corporate IT platforms. Now I'll walk you through which one makes the most sense for you. The incoming presenter provided a summary of what Mike just did, the 3 compelling reasons, and then segues into her section.